Well, welcome and thank you for doing this, and happy January. I guess we're in, what are we, January 5th, fifth day of World Carnivore Month for those that are keeping track here. I have to say, before we get started, I have to say I'm just feeling fantastic. I'm just back to 100% beef, and I just feel tremendous. I had been including a lot more eggs and dairy recently, and it just kind of striking the sort of the difference it makes. I always feel pretty good, but I just feel like, a little bit extra good now. We are on YouTube for you guys that are listening. We usually do the first part of the interview on YouTube, and then we close it down. So if you want to be part of the full interview, head on over to MeetRx. You can join us for free for at least a month, and then if you like it, you can stick around. Great time to do this. Get all the help that you need. All right, with that, let's get rolling here. So Alysha, and it's kind of Alysha van der Valk. So I assume that is that a Dutch? What kind of name is that? Oh, you're blood. Let me. I still got you muted. Let me unmute you. See if you can unmute yourself.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you. It is a Dutch name. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just had on Tara, and Tara's last name was Tara Van something. I can't remember the last part of it, but she was also from there, and originally. So it's kind of interesting. We have two sort of Dutch folks in a row, which I think. Maybe there's some degree of attraction for people with that sort of heritage to this sort of animal-based diet, as their ancestors undoubtedly would have been on an animal-based diet. There's no mangoes growing in Scandinavia or that part of the world in Northern Europe. So Anyway, well, welcome. Can you give us a little bit of your background? I know you've been doing an animal-based diet and you do some beauty-related stuff, and I think it comes from the inside, but you look very, very nice as well. So it's working for you. So give us a little bit about your background.
So first of all, just thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to be here today. As you said, my name is Alysha and I live in Toronto, Canada. And I did discover a low-carb diet about 4 years ago after spending much of my life yo-yo dieting and not really feeling like the best version of myself. So about a year and a half into my journey, I decided to go more animal-based. And through this, I was able to get to a healthy weight and get off my medication and fully manage my symptoms of depression through diet alone, which I think is super exciting. And this really sparked a passion for health and nutrition for me. And now I seek to educate others through my Instagram platform and also through my podcast, The Carnivore Roundtable, on how this way of eating is more than just a diet.
Yeah, and so, and I've talked. I can't. Who was it that I know we interviewed somebody from the Carnivore Roundtable, one of the radiologists, a few.
Budget, yeah.
a few weeks ago, and I'm looking. I think I'm supposed to be going on that sometime this month. I think, if I'm not mistaken, but. Toronto is cold.
It's cold. Very.
I've been there in the wintertime. In fact, I think we spent the entire time underground. Is the Hockey Hall of Fame there? Is that where that is?
Yep, we have the Hockey Hall of Fame here. Yeah, big hockey place for sure.
That's what I thought. So, did you ever sort of dabble in the plant-based stuff? Is that something you ever?
It's something that I considered growing up. Back when I used to live with my parents, and they basically told me, like, look, this is how we're eating. If you want to eat like vegetarian or vegan, that's on you. But like, we're cooking what we're eating, so you can figure that out on your own. And to be honest, I tried it for like a week. I was lazy. I felt tired, and I was like, I'm gonna just go back to eating, meat and potatoes at the time and that kind of stuff.
So what? I know you're sort of. I guess your social media focus is on beauty related stuff. Is that fair to say?
I would think so. Yeah. Just the whole health and beauty industry. It's all about how you look, right?
Well, of course. Yeah. And I just, it's kind of interesting because I just on my social media, there's a Cosmopolitan cover, and it has a morbidly obese woman saying this is healthy. And I not to say that these people are bad or evil or anything, they're the quote unquote fat shame, but it's not healthy. And I don't know that message is helping people, particularly young, impressionable girls that, they're starting out there and they don't see what's going to happen to them in 10, 15, 20 years down the road, where all that, all that sort of catches up to you. I think that's unfortunately, that's sad thing. You don't have to be emaciated and supermodel skinny either. I think there's a, you know, my personal bent is towards more muscle. I think that looks good. I think that's something that, you know, even for women to be athletic and, you know, lean appearing and yet have some muscle on them. But what have you found with regard to, because there's so much, the beauty industry is incredibly huge. I mean, there's just billions upon billions of dollars spent on creams and conditioners and this and that and all kinds of things. How much do you think beauty comes from the inside? And I'm not talking about you're a nice person, you smile and you're happy. I'm talking about physiologically from the inside. And that would be diet, exercise, those things that you know, instead of needing creams to make your skin look good, maybe food has an impact. Has that made an impact, or do you feel that that's the case?
Absolutely. I do feel that beauty comes within, and a lot of it has to do with one's diet. When I was eating a standard diet, or even worse than a standard diet, and a lot of junk food, you know, my skin was terrible. I was breaking out. My hair was brittle, my nails as well. You know, you're not going to get that nice meat glow if you're eating so crappy. So I definitely think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, certainly I'm sure some creams and such help, but I do really think it starts from the inside. And I consider a lot of those skincare products to be more Band-Aid solutions to a lot of things, much like the pharmaceutical industry. You know, they're not really looking at deep down what the issue is. You can take vitamins and pills and, you know, slather on skin cream all you want. But if you're not going to fix the problem deep down, then you're going to continually find that you have these issues. And, you know, to your point, it's a huge industry, right? And people are not spending money if they think they already look great. So there's a lot of marketing towards that. And it's the same with the diet industry as well. So, you know, people are always just trying to profit off of people feeling and not looking great. So
yeah, and one of the things, you know, we see so many people that, you know, they've got rosacea, and some people have these, you know, autoimmune issues, you know, with the psoriasis, eczema. They have, you know, just dry skin, you know, acne and those types of things. And, you know, it seems like diet seems to make a huge impact on those things. And there are, you know, you don't have to be, well, I really don't watch much TV anymore. And I can't remember the last time sometimes in a hotel room, I'll turn the TV on, but I mean, generally I'm not there. But when the TV does go on, you're inundated with, you know, advertising for these things. And, you know, like a lot of these are medications, these immune modulating medications for psoriasis and so on and so forth. And they sort of normalize this. Oh, it's, you know, it's just psoriasis, no big deal. It's just an autoimmune disease. It's probably destroying other parts of your body, but don't worry about it. We got a pill for that. Keep doing what you're doing, you know. How much, so what your diet, you said an animal-based diet, you know, how much of a role does fat, dietary fat, saturated fat, animal fat, do you feel have a role in promoting, that you talk about a glow, skin health?
I think it certainly helps. And I think it's also one of the reasons why so many people, you know, struggle with poor skin issues and stuff, like in addition to just having inflammatory foods as part of their everyday diet, and, you know, the sugar and the grain and the seed oils and stuff. But I think fat is something that a lot of people are missing from their diets. And, you know, it's so important with hormone regulation and, again, that meat glow and everything. And I do think there is benefit to using it inside and out. I saw someone mention tallow. That is one of the skincare products that I actually really enjoy using on my face and my body, is tallow as a moisturizer. So, you know, on the skin and inside, I think it's great. And of course, it's a great source of energy. When I first started with a low carb diet, and after spending many years trying to avoid any type of fat in my diet, it was something I kind of struggled with eating and incorporating, because I just hadn't quite come to terms with the fact that it was, you know, okay to eat, and in fact encouraged. And so a lot of my meals were just sort of meat and veggie. There was nothing additional to that. And I didn't feel great right away, you know, and it didn't occur to me that when you're removing a macronutrient from your diet, the carbs, and that's something your body has been running on for so long, you do need to replace it with something else. And that was the fat for me. So once I kind of got over that and started incorporating more fat into my diet, I certainly felt a lot better. And I do attribute that to much of how good I feel and the meat glow.
Yeah, I think and a number of people just comment all the time how their sort of inflammation goes away. And we see that in our skin. We see that in our face. We see that, externally. I mean, our teeth are another good place where, people talk about, well, sugar's not a problem unless you eat it in excess, but sugar rots people's teeth. There's no question about that. That's not even controversial. And so clearly something that rots your teeth out. Teeth are designed to last you your lifetime. They're one of the hardest they are the hardest substance in the human body, and they're designed to last, they do last. We've got teeth going back for thousands, if not millions of years in some of the anthropologic finds. And so when we have food that destroys that, it's very interesting, and you have to wonder what to do about it. How is, you're in Canada. I know Canada just came out we just had our food guidelines released for 2020. Once again, who was saying that they were lagging behind. Yeah. And I said, they're not lagging behind. They're just flat out not based on evidence at all, or at least not current evidence, or at least, but the Canadian food guideline came out, I think a year before, 2 years ago, and they were very much plant heavy, plant based. Are you seeing that being pushed throughout Canada as far as what kind of diet to eat?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been that way for a little while now, and it's going to continue to be very prominent in our society. You have the push for meatless Mondays. You see a lot of fast food joints, promoting their what I consider not to be food, but they're Impossible burgers and everything. So there's definitely a push for that, and people trying to promote that. Even on Netflix and people consuming media, you have a lot of these documentaries that promote plant-based diets, and they're saying how we're destroying the world by eating cows. So I think it's an issue, and it's quite concerning, honestly. I mean, I think it's fine if someone wants to eat in a way that they believe makes them feel good. But I am a little concerned, truthfully, when it almost becomes legislated. Like, people are going to try to stop us from eating in a way that makes us feel good. And I think that's what my concern is with that.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, and obviously, I'm obviously very biased because every day I get confirmation of that with people being healthy. I mean, I just see it all the day long. Every day I wake up, I get a handful of messages from people saying, "Hey, I just got better. Everything got better." And it doesn't matter what it is, it seems like. So I'm certainly seeing where this animal-based diet is extremely healthy for people. It seems to be, many people. And to say that, well, as a society, we're going to ignore that, and we're going to just accept that people are going to be fat, sick, unhealthy, depressed, just because we're going to save the planet somehow. I would argue that fat, sick, depressed people do not lead to a healthy planet. I think a planet full of healthy, thriving, robust, happy people in turn lead to a healthy planet. And I think we can do that. Now it's getting that message out there in a big way. And I do that, sometimes pretty aggressively because I'm pretty passionate about it, and some people get upset by that. But I think it needs to be said, and it needs to be said loud, and it needs to be, we need to stand up to that. And and I'm happy to see someone younger than me, because I'm in my 50s. I'll soon fade into irrelevance at some point. The old people get pushed aside, and nobody cares about what they think anymore. And I'm hopefully not in that category yet, as I try to inspire people by acting like a 10-year-old sometimes. But anyway, no, it's good to see it, because I think this is your generation, and I'm not exactly sure how old you are, but I know you're certainly younger than me. But you guys are going to be significantly infected, because we get these. You grow up. Some kids are going to grow up never having had animal products. I mean, they're going to be forced. Their parents are going to force it on them. It's going to be encouraged in the schools. They're not even going to know. I mean, it's just one of those things. If you don't know what's attainable, from a health standpoint or happiness standpoint, that's the status quo. So you never think about it. And so what a lot of people find when they go on a carnivore diet, even if they weren't particularly unhealthy, they're like, wow, I just feel, so it's like it's like you start living in Technicolor again. It's like you're in gray and cloudy. It's like going from black and white TV to color TV. It's like, wow, look at all those colors that were available to me.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I kind of liken it to leveling up, so to speak. And you don't realize how bad you felt until you feel so much better. And then your baseline improves. I know a lot of people go through life and they're like, oh, I'm tired all the time. My joints are sore. I just don't have the motivation to do anything. And I'm like, well, how are you eating? And that tells me everything I need to know. And people just sort of assume that as they get older, they're meant to feel like crap. And I said, that's not the case, and it's silly to me that a lot of people will take medication for certain things and they'll realize that this tiny little pill can have such a great effect on their body, but then they won't make the connection to how what they're consuming, and not just food, just the media that they're consuming, the food that they're consuming, the products that they're using on their skin and in their house, and how that doesn't have an effect on things. So I really hope that I can, help convince people see that it's more than just that.
And what is your, I guess, day-to-day, job, family, what is your day-to-day life?
So in terms of work, I just working communications and issues management as a public servant, and that's about it. I don't really have a family or anything, like in terms of a husband or kids or anything like that. I'm just kind of doing my own thing, and then I have my Instagram and podcast on the side. I've considered health and nutrition coaching before because it is something that I'm very passionate about, but that's basically it.
And so the communication stuff, are you, I don't know, with this current situation, are you doing everything from home now, or did you go to an office prior to that? What was it?
Yeah, prior to this, I did work in an office, but I have been working fully remotely since March 13th of last year.
And when you were back in the office, were you in this sort of low carb? You weren't quite doing a meat-based type back then, or were you?
I was, yeah, I am. So I definitely got some looks from my colleagues being like, what are you eating? It's just like a giant container of ground beef and like an egg. So definitely a little bit strange, but I found it easy enough to do in the office. It's certainly much easier now that I'm at home because I can just cook whatever I want, whenever I want. It's better, it's fresher, it's hot. So I've been enjoying that for sure.
Yeah, I do have to say that, and I do a lot of the stuff from home as well when I'm not traveling. And I think it certainly facilitates the diet. You can do it a lot more cheaply. It was interesting that Tara yesterday was saying that actually dairy consumption has gone up quite a bit since people are eating at home again. And so we're seeing actually an increase in meat sales. This is something that as much as we try to push back against the plant-based, this is something that I think is a bit alarming. And so the Eat Lancet report, which was, basic, conglomeration of people that really want to push this plant-based narrative. And it's funded in part, the Wellness Collective is funded in large part by these big petrochemical companies that would really, really like to get you to fully switch over to this grain-based, petroleum-based, cheap diet, the global diet for humanity. It's really the global diet to make a lot of money for a few people. But despite that, that big push, and they are marketing how people don't want to do it. They want to keep eating meat. And the thing that they say in their literature is, we realize that people will not voluntarily adopt this diet. People will not voluntarily adopt a plant-based, grain-based, again, processed food, synthetic diet. So we're going to have to force them, and we're going to do that. And they've outlined several ways, whether it's legislatively, whether it's financial incentives or disincentives, whether it's tariffs, import and export things to drive a global, junk food diet, basically a processed food diet. This is what we have with the powers that be, the World Economic Forum, these people that want to sort of shape society to their desire. And so I do think we have to be on our guard. I think we just have to, I think, some people call us extreme, but I think we're the ones that are sort of protecting the rest of the people. And this population that just does meat is showing unequivocally, in my view, that meat is healthy, and we cannot eliminate it from the meat standpoint. And then we just have to figure out how to make it work. Since you switched over, like I said, what kind of improvements in your health have you seen, or in general, or mindset, or whatever?
Yeah, so after switching over, I certainly felt a huge increase in my energy and general mood. So being able to get off my medication was huge for me. I also have, I just feel more mentally sharp. I'm not a natural redhead. I'm more naturally blonde. And I always, struggle to even get through a full sentence without stopping, because I was just so like, I had the carb dumbs, like I used to I like to call them. And it just wasn't a good look, the dumb blonde trope and everything. So I felt really dumb a lot of the times when I was just not able to fully articulate my thoughts. And so being able to do that has also been a huge win for me. Of course, my hair and nails are so much better now. I just feel like I have a glow. And, I'm less irritable. I don't get hangry. My world doesn't revolve around when am I going to get my next meal. I just feel overall so much better.
Yeah, it is a little bit comforting to know that you're kind of satiated and, you can go, I mean, this is the thing people ask me about fat adaptation. So how do you know when you're fat adapted? And I just tell them, hey, look, if I tell you tomorrow you can't eat, are you going to be to say, okay? And to me, that, and not that I'm saying you need to fast or there's a reason for you to go 24 hours with food, but if that were the situation for me, and I've done it many times, sometimes traveling, I'm like, I'm not going to eat their crap because they only have crap. I'll just skip eating and I'm fine. I don't, like I said, it's not what I generally do, but I mean, there's people that do that, but I think that is a kind of a game changer, realizing that you're not constantly, tied to some glucose hit or sugary carbohydrate hit that you have to have.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, I look at my friends before we go on a road trip or step on a plane, everyone's loading up on like the chips and the chocolate and the pop, and God forbid we don't eat for an hour, and I think it's just so silly where it's just like, okay, well, I can go all day without eating. And at the end of it, I'm like, I could eat. I could also not, that's fine. But they're just like blown away by that. They're like, what do you mean? Like, I have to have something and now, otherwise I'm going to stab someone or something. Like the hanger is a real thing.
Yeah. I can't remember the last time I felt like that. It's been 5 years now, or at least 6 years, 7 years since I remember there was a time when, I've got to eat something. I've got to eat it right this second, or I'm going to pull somebody's head off or something like that. But I will say, with about playing, because I just got done flying this weekend, and because in an airport and a plane, they force you to wear these masks, and so what I found is if I get a big drink of water with a straw, I can sit there and just nurse that thing for the whole flight. You can sit there comfortably, and not that I'm anyway, I don't want to get too controversial about that, but you can walk around and eat and you're fine. And I just kind of question, well, I can eat and I'm not causing people to die, but if I'm not eating, then I don't know. It's just kind of a crazy thing. What is so outside of an animal-based diet, beauty stuff, and I'm sure there's people that have an interest in that, what other things are out there that are available that you find to be helpful?
How do you mean exactly?
Well, I mean, like I said, obviously we talked about the fact that nutrition does have an impact on our skin health and our glow and all that other stuff, but there's other things that we can do to look and feel our best. So what are those other things that you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you mentioned the eating, you mentioned the skincare. Like, I definitely think the products that you're putting on your skin have a huge effect on your overall health. I believe the products that you're using in your home as well have an effect on that. Things like what you're consuming media wise, that can also be quite depressing, if you're constantly watching the news. So just trying to surround yourself with better things, it gets you in a better headspace. I certainly think exercise plays a role. Try to move 30 minutes a day, get outside, fresh air, get some vitamin D. I think that's super important as well. It's not just, it's a fulsome approach to health and wellness. It's not just focusing on one specific thing. I think it all comes together.
I'm just, and forgive me if this embarrasses you, but I'm looking at your hair and you look like one of those hair commercial girls. I mean, you got really nice looking hair. And, I was just saying, I'm wondering, do you do anything special for hair care products? Or, I mean, I'm a guy that doesn't have much hair, so I don't really care too much about it, but I mean, it looks like there's one of those hair care commercials. So maybe that's the diet's helping that as well.
Yeah, I certainly think, meat, fat play a huge role in that. And other than that, I just wash it with normal products, and I use a blow dryer to put it straight, a little bit of hair oil after I put out the tallow on my face. If I have any extra on my hands, I'll just kind of run it through my ends, use it for whatever I can. So that's about it. But yeah, thank you.
Where and the tallow you use, is that something do you just render your own tallow, or is there a tallow place you get it, or where do you get tallow from?
I buy mine from Fancy Farm Skincare, but you certainly could do it at home. I just don't. It's easier for me to purchase it. But at some point, I think I would like to figure out how to do that on my own. To my understanding, it's not that difficult. And if I could make a larger batch of it, that would be fantastic, because I do like it and I would love to use it more full body. But I really only have like a small jar, so I do use it sparingly.
Yeah, and I know we have a number. Some of the folks are commenting in here. It's super easy, so it would be good if we don't already have that on our website. Maybe we can show somebody how to render out tallow for skincare products. Because there's Becky. I don't know if we can put that on the Meter X. If we put the recipe for that, that would be great. Just so we can do that. And some people are saying they mix it in with essential oils to make it maybe smell. Because tallow is pretty neutral. It doesn't really smell. Like I cook with it. I don't smear it all over my body or anything like that. I just eat it, but, and I've got some tallow that's Wagyu base I had ordered. And it's just interesting because it's very liquidy because of the higher monounsaturated fat content in Wagyu beef. So, I'm just reading the comment. Lark says when she puts tallow on her legs, the dogs start licking her legs. She has to put essential oils to dissuade it from doing that. So interesting. So what, since you've been, it seems like the trendy thing to do is to go plant-based, and you get a lot of accolades. Oh, good for you. You're saving the planet. Look at you. In reality, you're not, but we see that. Do you get people that are negative towards you for this? I mean, you seem like a bright, happy, nice person, whereas I'm kind of sometimes a bit of an ass, but, but are you getting a lot of any negativity directed your way?
In person, not really. On Instagram at times, I actually consider myself to be fairly lucky. I haven't gotten a ton of hate for that, but there certainly has been a few vegans come on my page and try to harass me and convince me that I'm, an asshole for eating this way. And, to each their own, I suppose. Bless them and block them and be done with that. I'm not here to argue with anyone about how I choose to fuel my body. I think it, shows how I don't want to offend anyone. I just think it's funny how vegans go out of their way to get offended by certain things. You don't see carnivores doing that so much, like going to their pages and instigating things. But I always just kind of find it funny. I've gotten some very strange comments from vegans saying, my fecal matter is probably full of worms, and to post photos of it, and I'll do all sorts of crazy stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of a weird fetish, but okay.
That is interesting. Yeah. I can't think of a bigger waste of time than coming on to someone who's on a carnivore-based page and spewing vegan nonsense. It's like, why are you wasting your time? No one is going to believe. That's hard enough. Stick to the elementary age kids. Those are the people you might have a chance of convincing, but anyone with half a brain and common sense is not going to do that, particularly someone that's gravitate to a carnivore-based diet. So, I just find that amusing. Like I said, I was doing an Instagram live this morning while I was walking my dogs, and I had some vegan idiot in there making his comments. I'm just like, why are you wasting your time here? It's like you could be corrupting some little 7-year-old kid. You're going to have more chance of changing their mind. Not that I want them to do that, but I'm just like, it's a joke to think that you're going to.
I feel like even in the school system and stuff, that is something that's certainly being pushed. Again, bringing up the meatless Mondays. I saw a post the other day about someone whose son had been sent home. I guess they brought sausages for lunch or something. And the teacher was basically like, you can't send this to school for your child. It's very unhealthy. We recommend, something more healthy in, something plant-based or whatever. And I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. They're growing children, their minds are developing, and here you are trying to starve them of any sort of good nutrition. And it's scary to think that's how our children are being raised these days, you know. And you have, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen that before in a lot of these sort of recommendations for snack items. They have to be low fat. I mean, I think that's the major directing. So it's the skim milks. It's maybe you might get away with a lean piece of chicken breast or something like that, but God forbid you send them there with, you know, a piece of ribeye or something like that. You know, as a parent, I would be extremely pissed off and let them know what I thought about that. Fortunately, none of my kids are in that situation. In fact, it's kind of funny. My oldest daughter is in a school, and I guess their principal follows me on Instagram and thinks what I do is, you know, enjoys what I do. So it's kind of good to see that. So they're, you know, you're kind of stomping out the nonsense, you know, one school at a time, one teacher at a time. You know, we've got, you know, Kelly Hogan, who's, you know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kelly. I mean, she's a 11-year carnivore, great advocate. She's been doing, you know, been out there publicly she was one of the really, I mean, you know, when I started looking into this stuff about 5 years ago, you know, you know, I was vicariously watching the people for almost a year before I committed. And Kelly was one of the only ones that was willing to get out in public. And she was on, you know, a different Women's World or something like that, Women's Day or one of these magazines. And we got a lot of flack for it, you know, and you know, and then since that time, then I kind of was able to, you know, influence some people. And, you know, I've been, you know, obviously it's been nonstop sort of attacking, and that's what you get. But I mean, I think the more people that do it, and again, kudos to you for being to do this. I mean, I've said this from the beginning, just get out there, be public, don't be afraid, because you're going to make a difference, and we need to make the difference. And so
I think so, absolutely. And, you know, it can be hard sometimes to go against the status quo and what we were taught growing up and what everyone believes to be true. But I think this really is an important fight to fight.
Oh, absolutely. I think if we don't have healthy people, I mean, what's the point? I mean, every other issue pales in comparison, in my view. If, if you're sickly and dying and feel awful, what's the point of living? I mean, it's kind of like,
that's something my dad has always said, you know, health is wealth. If you don't have your health, you have nothing at all. You only have one body, one chance to do it right. Like, don't waste it.
Yeah, you don't get to do, you know, I think we grow up in this video game society where you can always hit the reset button or the do-over button. There's not really a do-over button. Although I will say that I think a carnivore-based diet, particularly like a true, just strict meat and water, is almost like the reset button. It is like, you know, just kind of resetting the gut, resetting the health. And for a lot of people, it kind of is a nice, because that's how we start. I mean, we start out on a carnivore diet, you know, granted it's through breast milk, but I mean, that's what humans start with. And I think there's decent evidence that suggests that humans were very much meat dependent through our early development as a species. And
absolutely, it's what made us human. You know, so I think it's fantastic. And it is really the ultimate elimination diet and a true way to heal one's body. I think a lot of people could benefit from trying it out and just getting a better baseline. And, you know, that's not to say that you need to be super strict forever. If you're able to heal a lot of issues that you have, you know, leaky gut, among other things, through a carnivore-based diet, I think it would be fair to, for some people, not for everyone, but to slowly start incorporating other things and to see how it makes you feel. I mean, you could try something and it doesn't work, and then you're like, okay, that's, you know, something that's not going to be for me and a part of my life at this moment. But that's very difficult to do when following a standard diet. You're just not in tune with your body at all. And, you know, you don't realize when you're bloated or you're achy. You just consider that to be normal. So I think there are tremendous benefits to this way of eating and just figuring out what exactly your triggers are.
Yeah. And so what have you seen, you know, as far as success? I mean, obviously, as you start to get, you know, you start to influence people give you feedback. What kind of things have you seen out in the community that has been surprising to you or been made you smile?
Well, it always just makes me happy to see people living their best lives, feeling their best, you know, having friends with kids and being able to keep up with them and run around, have that energy to focus on that, or to go back to school and learn something. And I think that's always super exciting. And just generally having a bigger, better zest for life. You know, you're not couch bound and sore, your knees feeling achy and such, I mean, I think that's tremendous. People getting to a healthy weight, whatever that is for them, and feeling more confident. I think that's always fantastic. And I love to see that. And when people share their stories, you know, either with me or with you, and I get to see how people's lives have been changed this way of eating. I mean, there's certainly like a whole laundry list of things that can be fixed or at least managed like this. For me, it was my depression. For other people, it's their irritable bowel syndrome, it's their anxiety, it's, you know, I could list off a ton of different things. And so it's always great to see people finding health and being the best version of themselves.
Yeah, I'm into that. And like I said, that's one of the things that keeps me doing what I'm doing now. What other kind of things are you into? Let's, you know, obviously, you know, I mean, we kind of, you know, we share a eating style, but we're all different people. And I hate to think that somebody's only identity is, you know, what they eat, because being able to eat a healthy diet allows you to be something and do something. So what would you say, you know, what else is going on with you?
Yeah. So, I mean, in addition to this way of eating, I have my podcast, which has been a really fun little side hobby for me. I do enjoy working out. I teach a low impact HIIT class every Wednesday night. I love going outside for walks, like either with my dog or hiking, hanging out with my cats. I have two raw carnivores living with me as well. I love to read. I think it's, you know, such a blessing how much access to information we have these days. It would be rude not to take advantage of that. So I love to read all sorts of books on nutrition. I have your book. I think that's always very exciting. And yeah, just being a student of life. Absolutely. I mean, prior to COVID, hanging out with my friends, of course. So yeah, those are kind of the things that make me me. And then I also have quite a passion for, I guess, cleaning up the skincare and beauty industry and advocating for safer and stricter laws around healthcare.
Let me ask you, so the dog, what kind of dog is that?
He's a mutt.
So, mutt. Okay.
Yeah, adopted from Nunavut. He's kind of like a little bit of husky, a little bit of everything. Very cute, super sassy, big personality.
Yeah, you mentioned Nunavut, and that's obviously the territory far north where we have quite a bit of the indigenous population up there. And so one of the things that's kind of you know, I think it's been 2-3 years ago, they came out with you know, we have the food pyramid or the food plate or whatever we have here, and there they had the food igloo. And in Nunavut, they were recommending, you know, like 8 servings of fruit and vegetables a day. And it's just like, you know, it just makes zero sense that because, you know, obviously none of that grows there.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's super expensive to have imported as well.
Exactly. And it's kind of crazy there. You said low impact HIIT. So can you describe that? How do you do that?
So low impact HIIT class is a little bit easier on one's joints. It doesn't have any jumping around. So it's more apartment friendly or people with, you know, issues with that. So it's still high intensity interval training. You definitely do get a good workout, but the exercises are just modified in a way that they're not going to cause any additional friction.
So what would be an example of that? I mean, I when I think of that, I think maybe a bike sprint or something like that, you know, a stationary bike sprint. But how would you give me an example of that?
Yeah, so instead of like jumping jacks or something like that, where it would be a lot of bouncing around, or mountain climbers or something, you would do similar types of exercises. It just wouldn't be so impactful. It's a lot of like lunges and, you know, burning out the muscles and that type of thing, squats and, you know, doing crab walks, and maybe I think they're called like ice skaters, where you're kind of going back and forth and, you know, touching the opposite direction and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just essentially you're not causing any additional strain on your joints. And it's also, I like to say, apartment friendly, because if you have someone living underneath you and they don't want to hear you banging on the floor continually as you're trying to complete a workout, it's good for that as well. So I chose to teach that particular type of class because the company that I work for, they already offer a lot of the other stuff. So I think it's also good for those a little bit older as well. It's just trying to get some variety in there.
Yeah, you mentioned like this because I've got one of these slide boards, a hockey slide board. It's like, but it's big. It's like 9 feet long because I'm a tall guy. You need a longer one, and that when I was training for some of the rowing stuff, that was one of the extra exercise I do. And I did for an hour. I just slide back, and that's a hell of a lot of workout. Just doing a hockey skating motion. You put little slippery things on your feet, little shoe covers, so you can slide back and forth. And that was something that was quite a good workout, but definitely low impact. But you can definitely get get a good bit of exercise in there. What has been? Have you? A lot of us go on this sort of. We've all been on a journey. I started. At the point where I was in my early 40s, I decided, hey, I got to change my diet from whatever it was, standard diet, to something. And I went through this low fat phase, and then paleo, and then low carb and keto, and finally carnivore. And then you learn things, and then you kind of continue to learn. What mistakes have you made, and what have you sort of learned over the time?
So definitely when I was first getting started, like I had mentioned, not really using fat as my main source of fuel. It just didn't occur to me that you would have to replace the carbs with something. And so when I first did keto, I didn't feel entirely great because of that. But when I really leaned into the fat, that was something that made me feel a heck of a lot better. And since then, I have done a lot of experimentation within the low carb realm. I've, been very veg and salad heavy. I did it was called the common sense keto approach, and it was like a lot lower protein, very high fat, and that was okay, but that also still didn't feel like completely right. And I have settled now more on an even ratio, I would say, of protein and fat, which has helped me feel a lot better. Electrolytes were a big thing for me. I know some people kind of just do whatever, but I personally feel a lot better if I have excess sodium in my diet. So I'm very liberal with the application of salt, and I've been known to even just kind of like shake some in my hand and take it like that. So that's made a big difference for me. In terms of supplementation, though, I don't really do much other than that, and vitamin D. Living up north, it's very dark here for a lot of the year, so I do find that that helps me get just through the day-to-day. But in terms of just what I found to be helpful, just embracing the fats, not being afraid to eat. I think a lot of people are so focused on it being a diet and having to do it a certain way. And I always find that to be just really frustrating, because when you go into it with that mindset, it's not the right approach. It's so much more than that. And when you do that, it puts the focus on the wrong thing. And sure, it can be a powerful weight loss tool, but there is so much more to it than that. And people tend to often overlook the other benefits to this way of eating when they're so focused on the number on the scale. And they may quit it or whatever because they're just not seeing the progress as much as they'd like. And I think another unfortunate thing is, it's not uncommon for people to initially lose some water weight on this diet. And then, they do it for 30 days or something. And then they're like, oh, well, this wasn't working as well as I had hoped. So then they go back to eating a standard diet and whatever made them feel crappy and bloated in the first place. And they gain back maybe those 5 or 10 pounds of water weight. And they'll say, see, it didn't work. It was terrible. And I'm always like, that's so annoying. I would say those would probably be the things for sure.
And we have a lot of people that are fans of fat in this community. Some people come from keto. Some people find that just satiates them better. For some people, it leads to better, mental clarity and so on and so forth. And, there's other folks who tend to be more protein heavy. I think there's a mix in there of what seems to work best for certain people. And so you can find that way. When you're saying you're finding about an even amount of fat, do you ever calculate it? Do you like,
No.
When I look at a ribeye steak, it's about 1 to 1. If I get 100 grams of protein, I'm going to get about 100 grams of fat out of a ribeye, or there and about. And so that's probably a medium level. And there's some people that like that really lean on the fat heavier, up to maybe even 2 to 1, with kind of a sort of a PKD ratio, so to speak. But what are your sources of fat? Do you do well with dairy, and do you do well with eggs, or where do you get your fat from?
Well, I'm currently eating dairy, and so that is a source of fat for me, but I feel like I'm one of those people that maybe shouldn't be consuming it in excess. So I am planning to cut back on the amount of dairy that I do consume. But other than that, I do have butter. I guess that is technically dairy as well, but butter is a big source of fat for me. Tallow, suet, what else? Leaf lard, cooking in those things. And then of course, eating, nice juicy ribeye always helps. If I have less fatty cuts of meat, then I'm certainly going to add butter or cheese or something on that just to supplement, because again, that's certainly what helps me feel best. And what else? I think that's pretty much it in terms of fat sources for me.
How is the meat situation in Canada or Toronto, I guess specifically? Do you find it's exorbitantly expensive? Is it difficult to acquire? Is it pretty plentiful? What's the situation like?
I've never really had any issues getting access to meat, other than when we did the first initial lockdown at the beginning of COVID and everyone freaked out and was, ravaging the grocery store. That was really the only time I ever had issues getting meat. I believe the prices have gone up a little bit. I don't really pay so much attention to that, but just comparing notes of my grocery bill, it certainly seems to have gone up. And I know I'm not spending money on silly little keto treats or anything like that. It's been always very basic, steak, butter, eggs kind of thing. But yeah, I'm not too worried. And I often do use local farms for my sources of meat. I very rarely actually go to the grocery store to get my meat. I do use wholesale clubs like Costco. I don't know if you have that there in the States, but Costco is good. And then working with local farms for any of my meat or organs or anything. I do use True Local. I just saw that someone asked that. So I love True Local. I think they're really great. Wild Meadow Farms is also a company that I use, and they both deliver right to the door, which I find very convenient.
Is True Local a Canadian-based company for just in Toronto, or is it Canada across Canada?
It is in some Canadian provinces, and I believe Chicago, Detroit.
Yeah. Okay, so the northern part of the country there. Okay. Have you since you've been doing the social media stuff? Well, I mean, let me ask you about the podcast, because and that's called the Carnivore Roundtable, correct? Yeah. And so is that explain to me what that is? That's a collection of people that are there every week, and you kind of have a group discussion, or what is it like?
Yeah. So prior to COVID and everything happening, we would do semi-regular meetups, as we like to call them, for the carnivore community in Toronto. And we always thought they were super fantastic, and we had a lot of great discussions. So when we went into lockdown, we started doing Zoom meetings much like this. And we had the idea, we've talked about some really interesting things. People might be interested in listening about this. Why don't we record one and kind of see where it goes? And so that was the beginning of the Carnivore Roundtable. And we've since, interviewed some really interesting people. We would love to have you on our podcast as well, of course. And it's just another way to get the word out there about this way of eating. I think, again, we've talked about how important it is to spread that and have people more exposed to this and the, benefits about it, benefits for it and everything. So any way we can get it out there, I think is great. So we're on all the major podcast platforms. It's more of a side project for us now, but we'd love to do more with it for sure. Yeah.
What, and I know initially you said, no family in the household other than a couple cats and a dog, but parents, brothers, sisters, do they have concern about what you're doing, or is that something
yeah, my parents actually were the ones that introduced me to the Banting diet, and they had come down and they were told me how great they feel, and they've been eating bacon and eggs and they've lost weight. And after, struggling with my own weight for a long time, I kind of perked up and I got super excited. So they were the ones that really sparked that for me. Now, since going more animal-based, they've definitely expressed some concerns about that and not getting my vegetables and, scurvy and all of that stuff. But I think they can see now that I'm doing just fine. And I've actually, I think made some headway in convincing them to try it. And I have 3 brothers as well, and one of whom had some chronic health issues. And, he was telling me, I think I'm going to go plant-based because I have IBS and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, don't do that for the love of God. Let me tell you about the way that I eat, and I think it'll be beneficial to you. And he was immediately like, are you telling me I get to eat steak all the time and butter and this is going to heal me? And I'm like, you know what, just try it for 30 days. What's 30 days? And he did, and he felt immediately better. His gut health was, it's hugely improved. And so he was like, thank you so much for showing me this. So I think that is really awesome as well. Now, I haven't talked to him in a while, so I don't know if he's still keeping with it, but I would hope so.
Yeah, that's the one thing that is interesting. And, there's a lot of speculation about gut health and the microbiome and how it impacts our overall health. And so they have these sort of measurements, these obscure measurements, of which we don't really know fully the significance of. What's our Bacteroides count? What's our Firmicutes count? What's, this or that organism? This marker or that marker, and we kind of say, well, we think this may be associated with people that eat healthier diets, and therefore that's a good thing. But what we fail to recognize as the obvious, we see these people that go on a meat-based diet, and their gut function just dramatically improves. And it's like, well, wouldn't it make sense that if my guts were working better, that they're healthier? I mean, that is just so obvious common sense to me, that the people that want to sort of steer you a certain way want you to measure some obscure thing, and you can't even trust your own gut, so to speak. You can't trust, wait a minute, I feel better. How can I be worse? Anyway, it drives me a little bit kind of crazy with that sort of thing. Trying to think what else we can get to. Anything else you want to share that we haven't touched on?
Oh God. Put me on the spot, why don't you? I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I feel like we covered a lot of really awesome and interesting topics today, and I really appreciate sorry, I just read a comment, eating frequency, that got me all messed up. But yeah, I mean, I can't really think of anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Lark's going to know, what is your eating frequency? Are you a 1 meal a day person? Are you 3 meals a day? I suspect 2 meals is probably what most people end up doing.
Yeah, I tend to hover between OMAD and 2 meals a day. I do often do I don't even know if I want to call it a fast if it's only 16 hours, but like wait in between dinner and lunch the next day to eat. I'm not really hungry when I first wake up, and I'm a big believer in intuitive eating. Like, certainly if I wake up ravenous, I'm going to have something, but I like the idea of feasting and fasting. And so I find that really drives how I consume food throughout the day. And, sometimes I'll eat a ton. When I'm in my luteal phase, right before my period, like, oh my gosh, I'm eating like 4 pounds of food, I swear. But then I might go 3 days and not eat. And it's just like, listening to my body and seeing what works best for me.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part that many people, I mean, I don't talk about a lot because it's not really impacting me, but we do see that there is a cyclical variation in appetite, insulin secretion, glucose levels around a woman's menstrual cycle. And that is, a lot of women talk about how they get cravings, just before or something like that. And so it's kind of interesting to look in that and see how that affects the way we eat.
Huge difference for me. I used to get terrible cravings for anything sweet around that time of the month. I would have awful cramps, like literally bedridden for 2 or 3 days at a time, and not being able to move. And, instead of trying to figure out what might be up, at the time, I was much younger. I was just put on birth control because they were like, well, this will fix that. And it was just a Band-Aid solution. There was no mention of any negative effects to my body or my hormone health by doing that. And that's something that I'm quite frustrated by. But since going carnivore, and I'm also off of non-hormonal birth control now, or off of hormonal birth control, I'm on non-hormonal birth control now. My periods are much better. I don't get any cravings. I don't get any cramps. I don't have back pain. I have to track when it's coming because otherwise I wouldn't know. And that's been amazing for me, like I said, as someone who used to be bedridden for several days at a time. So.
Yeah, and I think that is something, again, it's not a topic that I often talk about, but I think it is an important and underappreciated benefit of this diet. A lot of women say their menstrual cycle, it either normalizes to where, they become more regular, they're shorter, they're less uncomfortable. We see women that previously were essentially infertile become pregnant. We see women with PCOS that no longer have PCOS when they fix the underlying metabolic issues. So, I mean, I think that's an important part for maybe your, demographic age group, because there's a lot of women in there that struggle. And I see this all the time. This is another thing. I see that a lot of women are sort of embracing the bloat or glorifying being bloated all the time because they're eating these salad-rich plant-based diets, and they immediately have this swollen, they look like they're 2-3 months pregnant, and they just say, well, that's my food baby or whatever. And that's not how, I mean, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, that's frustrating to me. And I think, you know, the whole body positivity movement is good and well in some facets, but this is one of those things that I don't agree with. And I don't like people normalizing the bloat or like thinking that it's okay or cute to have a food baby. I don't think we should normalize these, you know, reactions to eating food that isn't good for us. To me, that's a very obvious reaction to having some sort of being able to not fully properly digest a food. If I get bloated afterwards, I'm like, this is not something that I should be consuming. So yeah, I think it is concerning that people are normalizing this. It's not okay. And you know, yeah.
Yeah, and that is the thing. I mean, this is a thing. We normalize, you know, bloating. We normalize obesity. We normalize depression. We normalize these various autoimmune issues. I mean, it's just, you know, it's like, hey, you know, it's just part of being a human. You're supposed to suffer and be miserable, and you know, take your pill. Shut up and take your pill. That is what society. We're kind of being programmed for that, and this is what I'm seeing with, you know, the later generations, where I'm like, wait a minute. You know, I don't have that, and I'm 50 something years old. I don't have these aches and pains and back pain and a big gut and ED and everything else that you're supposed to get when you're an old guy. I don't have all that stuff. And so I'm like, this is not stuff that we should ever normalize. We should be really pissed off that we're being expected to accept this stuff. So
Absolutely. But people aren't making money off of healthy people now, are they?
that is true. There's a lot of truth in that, unfortunately. And so hopefully, and you know, it just seems like you've got to be considered a quack to tell people just to stay healthy and avoid the doctor. You know, our healthcare, and I don't know, you know, the Canadian system obviously a little bit different with the, you know, the nationalized healthcare for, you know, you know, you've probably got some private, but for most people, the nationalized healthcare system is different. But here in the U.S., I mean, medicine is extremely, extremely profitable, and there are billions of dollars that get poured into that, and the outcomes are not good. We as a country suck with our medical outcomes in general, particularly with regard to chronic disease. You know, we have some wins in acute care and some life-saving, truly amazing interventions, but for 98% of the people, the healthcare system is an abysmal failure, in my view. Absolutely. As someone who spent most of his career in there, you know, as a physician, you know, so it's kind of good to see that we're figuring it. Some of us are figuring it out. You know, like I said, you can't make everybody get there, but all right. Well, we've gone through an hour. This has been really nice. Alysha, I appreciate your time and effort, and I look forward to coming on the roundtable at some point. Where do people go to find you, the roundtable, your social media, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so you can find the Carnivore Roundtable on YouTube or any of the major podcasting platforms, and you can find me on Instagram. I'm at FatFueled with 2 L's.
So the fueled has 2 L's in it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it normally does, but someone had already taken that account, and I really wanted it, so I added an extra L in there.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's tough. You know, it's kind of, you got to come with those things. All right. Well, thank you very much. You guys have a great day. We will see you all back tomorrow, and stop by anytime. Okay. We'd love to have you in the community.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was great to meet you all.
All right. You guys have a great day. Talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.